Hi there, my name is Doug Hansen, and this is my speech to inform discussing Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how it pertains to addicts and alcoholics in recovery. Here is my mother and father, if they would like to wave. Hello, that's mother and father, so they are going to be right over here listening and watching as we go through the speech. So I decided to do it on this because this is actually a lecture that I give at work here at Shepherd Hill, something I'm a little bit more familiar with, and I think it's something important that people can learn, especially going through school here. So Abraham Maslow was born April 1st, 1908, and he lived until June 8th of 1970. He's an American psychologist who created Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a theory of psychological health predicament on fulfilling innate human needs in priority, culminating in self-actualization. We're going to talk about each one of these levels in a little bit of detail and how drugs and alcohol can get in and impact and affect somebody's abilities to function at these different levels. Maslow worked at a number of universities on the East Coast, and he is regarded as one of the more important psychologists in the last 100 years. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is illustrated as a pyramid, and on each level of the hierarchy of needs are psychological, security, social, self-esteem, and self-actualization needs. You might be wondering how this has to do with addiction. Well, unfortunately, if you happen to find yourself in addiction, the drugs and alcohol can get in the way and impair a lot of these different levels. During active addiction, drugs and alcohol can little by little become your only priority in life, taking away a lot of the important things in a person's life. When drugs and alcohol come first, everything else comes second. So for example, some people will allow themselves to become homeless to ensure that they have their drugs and alcohol. Some people will give up jobs, some people will leave school. We're going to talk about a little bit of these throughout this presentation. So how does addiction affect the hierarchy of needs? Well, on Maslow's first level, the most basic fundamental is going to be our psychological needs. That includes food, and water, and shelter, and clothing, and sleep. And if somebody's psychosocial needs aren't being met, then most likely they're not going to care about anything else. If someone doesn't know where their next meal is coming from, thinking about things like a higher power or a purpose in life really takes no precedence in their lives. Having a safe place to lay their head at night is something that a lot of addicts and alcoholics can't afford. They don't know where their next meal's coming from. They don't know where they're going to stay. So when drugs and alcohol get in somebody's lives, they oftentimes find themselves missing out on meals, medicine, safe place to stay, and a lot of these basic fundamentals that a lot of us might take for granted. Level 2 in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is how addiction affects the need for security. Needless to say, when people are drinking and using, they're usually running around with some sketchy folks, places they shouldn't be, parts of town they're not familiar with. And so a lot of the security needs are not met. So people don't feel safe, they don't feel secure. They don't have this sense of belonging, they don't have the sense of community that maybe they once had in their lives. So drugs and alcohol get in, they slowly infiltrate, like I said, different areas of people's lives. A lot of times people have outstanding warrants, they've got arrests, they've got health issues, so they're usually not in very good standing, or they don't feel like they're in very good standing with the public, the community, and even law enforcement. Being addicted to drugs and alcohol can completely strip this away. I've worked with a lot of patients who have long, decades-long legal histories, some even multiple prison bids. As the addiction progresses, this level completely goes unfulfilled. We're drinking and driving in this level. At this point in the addiction, we're buying and selling drugs, we're going places we shouldn't, and we're being exposed to parts of life that maybe we didn't know existed before. The drugs and alcohol get in, and they really take a toll on somebody's feeling of being safe and secure. This also puts us in harm's way. You might find yourself again hanging out with people who are taking you to some dark places, either emotionally, mentally, or physically. Sometimes we go to some sketchy places. We end up meeting up with our drug dealers in parking lots and back alleys and downtown, maybe where we're not comfortable. So the drugs and alcohol really strip away that sense of security and peace of mind. Level 3 in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is the need to feel belonged and loved. And this is the level that hurts your family and your friends. This is the one where people end up homeless. This is the one where people end up estranged from their parents or their children or their friends and loved ones. When you no longer care about, it's not that you don't care, it's because the drugs and alcohol get in. When you no longer have the ability to care for yourself, a lot of people will start pulling away, or you as the drug addict start pushing people away. And so we end up feeling very lost and alone and very isolated. During this level, you might begin to lie and steal and cheat to get what you need, to fulfill the need of the drug and alcohol. Little by little, this damages the relationships. Sometimes we don't see it as the addict and alcoholic, but our friends and family are well aware of what we're doing to ourselves. Relationships take a back seat. They become less important. It's not that we don't love these people, it's that the drugs and alcohol take a precedent in our lives. Drugs and alcohol also have a good way of lowering people's standards. So they're more apt to go out with people or spend time with people that they normally wouldn't, put themselves again in very risky situations. And as time goes by, we get accustomed to this lifestyle. We get used to being alone. We get used to the isolation. And so we don't have that trust in ourselves. We don't have trust in other people. So when people come into early recovery, they have a hard time with this one because they haven't been around other people. Level 4 of Maslow's hierarchy talks about self-esteem. Self-esteem actually comes in two flavors. It's self-esteem and esteem for others. And I think it gets in the way of both of those. Usually our self-esteem, our achievements, our goals, our dreams are stripped away. They end up taking a back seat just like our relationships do. Drug addicts and alcoholics usually don't have a good view of themselves. When they look in the mirror, they don't like what they see. Sometimes they don't look in the mirror at all. A lot of times our relationships with other people struggle as well. The esteem for other people. We don't trust people. We don't believe people. We don't look at the world as a caring, loving place anymore. We get caught in the middle of our addiction and it begins to lie to us. I've heard people say that their addiction, their disease, talks to them in their own voice and it lies to them, tells them they're not good enough, tells them they're worthless or helpless or hopeless. This just isn't the case. So when people come into early recovery, we need to boost that self-esteem. There's a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous saying that we will love you until you can love yourself. I think that plays a big part in this as well. Level 5, that's going to be the pinnacle of it. That's going to be self-actualization. And that's going to be becoming the best version of ourselves that we can be. When we're drinking and using, if we don't know where our next meal's coming from, if we don't know where we're staying tonight, if we don't know where our next money's coming from, if we don't know where our jobs are, if we don't have any of these friends and family, this idea of being the best version of ourselves is just completely foreign. So this idea of self-actualization is something that takes time. It's not something that comes right back. But a lot of people give up on their dreams, give up on their hopes, drop out of school, take a menial job, just to try to get by in the name of their addiction. So self-actualization is actually the highest form of being. So a lot of times you'll find people that are spiritual in nature. They pray, they meditate, they have good, healthy relationships with other people, which helps them become the best version of themselves. But during active addiction, this is almost untouchable. Some people will get involved in 12-step groups like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. Some people will get involved with their church to try to find that spiritual connection. As you can see here, the caterpillar becomes the butterfly. By climbing back up into society, by fulfilling those basic needs in early recovery, people start to gain that self-worth, start to surround themselves with healthier people, get those relationships back with their friends and family. And this can lead to that self-actualization where somebody finds out that they are capable of more than maybe they thought they were. This quote says, self-actualization is about moving up to the next level and being the best we can be in order to give meaning to the life. And I think that's very true. Because I think the meaning of life is trying to find the meaning of life. But if we're drinking and drugging, we don't have that. One of the things I talk to our patients about is purpose. I hear a lot of people talk about being lonely. And I was taught that loneliness is not a lack of people, loneliness is a lack of purpose. And so once we find our purpose in life, which I don't think is getting drunk and high, we can then find our other purposes in life, which is helping other people, which is being a parent, being a son, being a daughter, going back to school, finding a new career, participating in art and music and sports. Those, I think, are purposes, but I don't think those purposes can exist at the same time that somebody's drinking and using. And this is one of my favorite quotes by the deep sea diver Jacques Cousteau. It says, "When one man, for whatever reason, has the opportunity to lead an extraordinary life, he has no right to keep it to himself." And I think in early recovery and in later stages of recovery, people find that sense of being and that sense of purpose and who they are and who they want to be. And I think that's where we find our purpose. And once we find our purpose, I think it's up to us, and I think it's our responsibility to share it with other people. So I hope this has helped a little bit. I know I kind of threw a lot at you guys, but if there's anything that you have any questions about, I got the resources here as well of where that PowerPoint presentation, some of that information came from. And there is also a reference list for the photographs that were used in this PowerPoint presentation. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate this opportunity, and I will talk to you on the next speech.